Firefighting in Canada this week is brought to you by VFIS of Canada, a division of CVIS Incorporated, Canada's largest insurer of firefighters. In this edition, the forest fire season may be off to a quiet start in Ontario, but experts say it could be a challenging year ahead. Then, the fire service is ever-changing. We rounded up some of the latest appointments and retirements. And in the latest edition of Firefighting in Canada, the podcast host Fire Chief Tom DeSorcy talks mass communication systems with Jacob Westfall, Chief Technology Officer with Public Emergency Alerting Services Incorporated. April marks the beginning of wildfire season in Ontario, and although it has been uneventful so far, a news report by CBC warns we should be prepared for a challenging year. Last year, wildfires forced evacuation of a number of remote northwestern First Nations and burned more hectares of land in the province in 2021 than any other year in history. So far in 2022, most places across the province, specifically the Northwest, are starting wildfire season with more snow than last year. The snow coverage will help to slow wildfire season, but CBC reports that while the snow can help regulate moisture content in vegetation, the amount of rain a region sees is an equally important factor to determine how susceptible an area will be to wildfires. Shalene Haynes, a fire researcher with the Canadian Forest Services, told CBC News that by monitoring moisture content in winter months, the Canadian Forest Service found drought conditions in the fall can impact the number of fires in the following spring. Based on recent findings, Ontario can anticipate more fires this spring. Here's a roundup of some of the latest personnel moves in the fire service. The town of Huntsville and the township of Lake of Bays in Ontario welcomes Gary Monahan as their new chief, and Paul Calleja as their deputy chief. Tim Wilkinson, the chief in Richmond, BC, announced his impending retirement after 30 years in the service. The city of Prince Rupert, BC, has promoted Jeff Beckwith to chief from his role as deputy chief. Central Saanich Fire in Saskatchewan welcomes Stacey Lee as deputy chief. In Clandonald, Alberta, Josh Anderson has been promoted from deputy chief to fire chief, and Brent Farrell has been promoted from captain to deputy chief. And in the district of Oak Bay, BC, interim deputy fire chief Frank McDonald has been appointed to the role of fire chief. In the latest edition of Firefighting in Canada, the podcast, host Fire Chief Tom DeSorcy is joined by Jacob Westfall, Chief Technology Officer with Public Emergency Alerting Services Incorporated, a mass notification software company based in Calgary who's the developer of Alertable software. The two discuss how public alerts have evolved, why radio is still a key player, what research shows about public reaction to emergency notifications, best practices for crafting your message, why it's important to know and address your policy hurdles, and how GPS plays a role in the next generation of population targeting. Westfall speaks on how social media is helping to improve the reception of emergency communications.
The most common response, as I said, when someone gets an emergency alert is that they don't take an action, or they question the legitimacy of that particular message. And one of the most common actions they'll take is they'll reach out and ask someone else, hey, did you get this? Hey, does this apply to me? So they'll look for validation of what they've received. And so social media plays a key role in that validation.
To hear the full episode, visit www.firefightingincanada.com under the podcast tab. Thanks again to VFIS of Canada, a division of CVIS Incorporated, Canada's largest insurer of firefighters. Stay tuned for our next episode on Friday, April 29th.